Hi YouTube. This is the next video in the series about preparing a Rived board for use in furniture or whatever you plan on using it for. In the last video I showed how to use a slick to bring the board as close to flat as possible while it's still very green. In this video I'm going to show how to use a scrub plane to scrub the board flat. And it's been about a week since I rived the board, and it's been sitting for about 2 days since I used the slick on it, so there's an area of the surface that has become pretty dry and is ready to be used with the scrub plane. I've already made a pair of diagonal passes across this board. It's important for your first set of passes that you not go from corner to corner, that you more or less, especially for a board this proportion, that you more or less just go about 30 degrees across the board, something like that. You want to engage the board along the length, but it's going to be too difficult early on to go from corner to corner. So in this way you can bring down the board gradually without creating low spots if you just went 90 degrees across, and engaging the grain in this way often makes it easier to peel it off. Now you probably notice that I'm using this plane pretty quickly, and that's because since it is a wood-bodied plane, it's very light, and you can use very little force to move the plane rapidly back and forth. So you can cover a huge area of board really quickly. Even though this video is cut, it's not edited down that much from real time. This entire board was scrub planed in less than 15 minutes. As with all planes, it's extremely important to keep the pressure applied to the blade evenly from the start of your cut to the end of your cut at the end of the board. And the reason for this is that you don't want to end up with a section in the center of the board, or the center of your cut, that is not planed as deeply as the start or the finish. And where you can go wrong is if you apply too much pressure to the hand that guides the heel of the plane at the start of the cut, and then when you get to the end of the cut you just sort of push the plane down over the edge on the other side. So what you want to do is transition pressure from the front hand on the plane at the start of the cut to the back hand on the plane at the end of the cut. And this will ensure a nice even plane cut the entire way. And maintaining pressure throughout the cut is exceptionally important in any plane you have where the blade is set very aggressively, such as a scrub plane or a fore plane that you're using for rapid material removal. Anytime you deviate from an even pressure application, you end up with an exaggerated out of flat condition. Now what I'm looking to do here as I'm starting each successive pass is I'm looking for the path I'm leaving with the scrub plane to intersect all the pre-existing planing marks to the bottom of that planing channel. I don't need to dig down further necessarily than the gouge that was left from the last time the plane blade went through there, but I want to make sure that I engage as close to the bottom as possible, or at the bottom. And what this does is effectively says, from this end of my stroke to that end of my stroke across previous strokes, the board is now flat. What I'm looking to do as I plane along the length of the board is basically connect all the diagonal grooves that I have together with a gouge I'm creating along the length of the board. And it's slightly difficult to get the board extremely flat because this plane is only about 9 inches long, but you can get it fairly close. And you can see there's a pair of diagonal grooves about a third of the way from the end of the left side of the board that are persistent, and so I'm planing along the length of the board evenly until I've gotten to the bottom of those grooves. Those grooves mark the lowest spot left. Occasionally you'll need to use the scrub plane slowly so that you can remove a precision strip that you may have left high, and it's important if you want to do a technique like this that you keep your plane blade extremely sharp. And you can see I'm just barely pushing down here. It's just very easy to control. If you have a blade that has become dull, this maneuver is extremely difficult because it will start to tear out. For the final step for planing flat with the scrub plane, I'm going to go the longest path I can, which is from opposite corner to opposite corner, and I'll start at that longest distance and then plane away from the center on each side, and then I'll switch directions and go between the other two corners until the board is as flat as I like. You may have noticed that the board appears to be feathering a bit near the knot, And that is for the same reason that I did not use the scrub plane to mostly flatten this board to start with. The wood is still fairly green, and I've gotten through the area that had dried over the last 2 days since I used the slick on it, and I've exposed the wet spot, and so it's starting to feather and clog the mouth slightly. So it's a good thing that this board is nearing flat so that I don't have to plane any further, or else I'd have to wait and continue scrubbing later. And so I'll keep planing diagonally like this until I've removed all the high spots and I've engaged all the low spots, and that's how I'll know when the board is flat. And in order to check that I've gotten to the level of flatness that I'm looking for, you'll see what I'm doing right here. I'm turning the plane on its side, and I'm just trying to see that there are no large dips or rises under the plane, and that I cannot rock the plane back and forth, and that's how you know when you've achieved flatness. The next step in flattening will be to use a fore plane, but I'll have to wait a couple more days for the top of the board to dry out a bit so that I don't gum up the fore plane. But that'll be the next step in the path to furniture. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments section below, and I'll be happy to answer them, suggestions as well. And if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe, and check back soon for the next video. Thanks very much, and happy woodworking.